The rain had started just after sunset, a thin silver curtain washing over the bus stop at the edge of town. He didn't move when it began. He had been sitting there long before the first drop fell, long before the streetlights flickered on with their tired yellow glow. Daniel sat hunched on the cold metal bench, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together as if he were holding something fragile and invisible between them. Cars passed every few minutes, their headlights briefly illuminating his face, unshaven, exhausted, eyes fixed on the empty road ahead. He wasn't waiting for a bus. The last bus had already come and gone. He was waiting for her. 5 years ago, on that same bench, Mia had told him she needed space. She had been standing, arms folded tightly across her chest, trying to look stronger than she felt. He had been sitting, just like now, staring at the ground because he couldn't bear to watch her walk away. "I'll come back when I'm ready," she had said, "if it's meant to be." He hadn't asked when. He hadn't asked how long. He had simply nodded because love sometimes makes you believe in impossible promises. She left that night with a small suitcase and tear-streaked cheeks. He stayed on the bench until dawn. Life, as it tends to do, had not paused for him. Daniel kept working at the auto repair shop, fixed engines, paid bills, smiled when required. But every year on the same date, he returned to that bus stop. He didn't tell anyone. It felt foolish enough without witnesses. Tonight marked 5 years. The rain grew heavier, tapping against the tin roof above him. His jacket was soaked at the shoulders. Still, he didn't move. Across the street, a small apartment building stood with most of its windows dark. Only one on the second floor glowed softly. A child's silhouette occasionally passed in front of it. Daniel glanced at his watch. 10:47 p.m. "She's not coming," he whispered to himself, the words tasting bitter. "Are you waiting for my mom?" The voice was small but clear. Daniel looked down to see a little boy standing a few feet away, holding a red umbrella that was slightly too big for him. Water dripped from its edges. The boy couldn't have been more than 6. His dark hair stuck to his forehead, and his sneakers blinked faint blue lights with every shift of his feet. Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "What?" The boy tilted his head. "You've been sitting there for hours. I can see you from my window." He pointed to the lit apartment upstairs. "Are you waiting for my mom?" Daniel let out a short, humorless laugh. "No, kid, I'm not waiting for your mom." The boy studied him carefully, as if weighing the truth of his answer. "She says people only sit in the rain when they're sad or in love." He paused. "Sometimes both." Daniel felt something twist inside his chest. "What's your name?" he asked. "Eli." "Well, Eli, I'm not waiting for your mom." Eli frowned slightly. "Oh," he looked disappointed, "because my mom doesn't have anyone waiting for her." The simplicity of the statement hit harder than it should have. Daniel shifted on the bench. "Where is your mom?" "At work. She works late." Eli stepped closer under the shelter of the bus stop roof. "She says it's just us. That's okay, I help her." Daniel nodded, unsure what to say. Eli looked back toward his building. "She'll be home soon. She always gets off at 11. Daniel checked his watch again. 10:53. "Does she take the bus?" Daniel asked without thinking. "Sometimes when it rains." They sat in silence for a moment, the rain filling the space between them. "My dad doesn't wait for her," Eli added quietly. Daniel felt a familiar ache. Maybe he can't. Eli shrugged, or maybe he doesn't want to. A pair of headlights appeared at the far end of the road. Eli straightened. "That's her bus." Daniel's heart began to pound, though he didn't know why. The bus slowed with a hiss of brakes, stopping in front of them. The doors folded open, and a few passengers stepped down, shielding themselves from the rain. Then she appeared. She wore a navy coat, her hair pulled back loosely, strands escaping and curling in the damp air. She held her purse close to her side, scanning the street with tired eyes. Daniel's breath caught. It was Mia. But for a split second, it had felt like it could be. The woman spotted Eli and her entire face softened. "Eli, what are you doing out here?" He ran to her, nearly slipping on the wet pavement. She knelt to his level, hugging him tightly. "I told you to stay inside when it rains." "I wanted to see if someone was waiting for you," he said seriously. She pulled back slightly. "Waiting for me?" Eli pointed toward Daniel. "He's been here for hours." Her eyes lifted and met Daniel's. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Curiosity, caution, perhaps recognition of shared loneliness. "I'm sorry," she said, standing and guiding Eli under the shelter. "I hope he wasn't bothering you." Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, he was." Eli beamed proudly, as if he had accomplished something important. The woman offered a small smile. "I'm Sarah." "Daniel." They stood awkwardly as the bus pulled away. "Were you waiting for someone?" she asked gently. Daniel hesitated. The truth felt too heavy, too raw. "Someone I used to know." Sarah nodded in a way that suggested she understood more than he'd said. "Did they come?" "No." The rain softened to a drizzle. Eli looked between them. "Mom, he said he wasn't waiting for you." Sarah raised an eyebrow playfully. "Oh." Daniel felt heat rise to his face. "I didn't even know you." "Well," she said softly, "now you do." Something about the way she said it lingered in the air. Eli tugged at her sleeve. "Can he walk us home? It's dark." Sarah hesitated only a second before looking at Daniel. "If you're not in a hurry." Daniel glanced at the empty road, at the bench he had occupied for hours, at the ghost of a promise that had kept him frozen for years. "No," he said quietly, "I'm not in a hurry." They walked across the street together, Eli in the middle, holding both their hands as if it were the most natural thing in the world. At the apartment entrance, Sarah turned to him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For sitting there," she said with a faint smile. "It reminded my son that someone can wait." Daniel swallowed. Sometimes waiting isn't the brave thing. Sometimes it's just being afraid to move on. She studied him carefully. "Maybe, or maybe it's proof that you know how to care." Eli yawned dramatically. "Mom, can he come over for hot chocolate?" Sarah laughed softly. "It's late." Daniel began to step back. "It's okay, I should." "You can," she interrupted gently, "if you want to." He looked at the bus stop behind him one last time. The bench was empty now, rain-washed and shining under the streetlight. 5 years of waiting had led him back there again and again. But tonight, for the first time, someone had spoken to him. Someone had seen him. He nodded, "Okay, just for a few minutes." Inside the small apartment, warmth wrapped around him like something he'd forgotten existed. Eli chattered endlessly while Sarah prepared 3 mugs of hot chocolate. The place was modest but full of life. Crayon drawings on the fridge, a stack of bedtime stories on the coffee table. Daniel felt strangely at ease. When he finally stood to leave, nearly an hour had passed. "Will you come back?" Eli asked, eyes wide. Daniel glanced at Sarah. She didn't look away. "If you're done waiting," she said softly, "you don't have to sit in the rain anymore." He thought about Mia, about promises that dissolved with time, about the way his life had narrowed to a single night each year. Then he thought about Eli's small hand gripping his earlier, about Sarah's tired but hopeful smile. "I think," Daniel said slowly, "I was waiting for the wrong person." Eli grinned triumphantly. "See, Mom, I told you." Sarah shook her head, amused. "You told me what?" "That someone was waiting for you." Daniel smiled for the first time that night, a real smile, one that reached his eyes. "Maybe," he said, "I was."